Well, good evening. This is John Bushka, and I want to show you a little bit of what the Great American State Fair Freedom 250 was like on the mall at the end of June and early July. It was up through July the 10th, and this is just a still photo I took from a video from near the 3rd Street side looking west at the Ferris wheel, and then many of the State Fair pavilions were in these sort of in these column-like buildings, and some of them were behind the Ferris wheel in these compartmental sort of compart locker looked like locker compartments, and so that's where a lot of them were. But let's just go and look at the rest of them, and some of them have to. And what I'm doing here is showing mostly my own pictures or a few pictures that are from public domain rather than photographs from the displays. Some of the states didn't have very big displays, so they didn't like, basically, they didn't like Trump. But so, and for reasons just so that I don't use copyrighted stuff from there, I'll just use my own photos and show what could have been included in the state fair exhibits and what I would have included. And I'm showing material that's generally similar to what you would have seen if you had gone. I visited all the states plus Guam and Hawaii and Alaska. And I don't have original material from all of them. I have it from most of the states. So let's just run through it. This is Alabama. This is Selma, Alabama, and that's the bridge. And um, the bridge, from the Civil Rights March. We'll go to California. That's Mammoth Lakes, California. That's from 2012 in my case. That's Palm Springs, California. Again from 2012 in my case. That's Colorado. That's I-25 near the New Mexico border, near Trinidad, Colorado, and southern Colorado. That's Connecticut. That's New London. That's the Coast Guard Academy, which has inside an exhibit of quarters for Coast Guard trainees that was useful in looking at the gays in the military issue when I was working on it. That's another scene from Connecticut, from near New London. That is an interesting picture between two of the compartment buildings in the District of Columbia that happened to show a metro car just sitting there. Not quite sure why it was there. That's Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, a few years ago, on the main street. One of the most popular beaches in the Mid-Atlantic. That's Delaware. I'm going through the states in alphabetical order and mostly trying to show things that are the more landscape, the more what the country looks like. Was from the fair, but these are animals in an aquarium in the Florida exhibit in the fair. That's not really a photo of anything. That was live. That's my own picture from 2023 of the edge of the Everglades, at about 49th Street exit in Fort Lauderdale. And this is the path, and that's where the Everglades start. That's Atlanta, Georgia, downtown. That's from 2004. That's Georgia. That's my father. That's New Virginia, Iowa. That's a family photo. About southeast of Des Moines, a little bit, Iowa. That's Chicago from the Willis Tower. Summer day in 2025, that photo I took. And that's the Trump Tower on the Chicago River in 2025. A little bit of irony. That's in Indiana. That's near Brown County State Park. It's actually a little bit hilly, a little bit of the last remnants of a little bit of Appalachia, actually, just a little remnant there. And then that's downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. That was my first job with RCA. I had about 2.5 months there at the RCA factory in Indianapolis. That was interesting. That's downtown in the distance, Indianapolis. That's Kansas. That's the Flint Hills in Kansas. That's a personal photo from around 2005, I think. I went to KU for graduate school in the 60s. That's the Campanile Tower at the University of Kansas. I don't know how that beam got in there, but that's behind the main campus. And that's just a grain elevator on the Kansas-Colorado border. That was 2022 driving back in a rental car. That's the that's a view of the Cumberland Gap between from I think it's from Kentucky, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. The Cumberland Gap view. We've got some versions from 2016. That's New Orleans from 2006. And that's damage from Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in February of 2006. The hurricane was in the end of August in 2005, remember. But that's some of the damage. That is looks like, to me, that looks like Cape Cod in Massachusetts. That's Boston, the Charles River. That's Harvard University. I think that was supposed to be the dorm building that Mark Zuckerberg lived in, that I figured out where it was or something, from 2015. That's Ocean City, Maryland, the pier. That's a cut in the mountain that's right. That's Sidling Hill along I-70, or it's 68, I think, actually 68, through through a mountain in Maryland behind the Blue Ridge. It's in the Ridge and Valley province on the way to Cumberland. That is a public domain picture of Mount Katahdin in Maine, which I had in 1974. I climbed, it's about right there. In 1974, I climbed to about halfway up to where that lake is, and I seemed to lose my place seemed to lose my place. But I climbed up to about this point. I think I saw a bear on the way back. He kind of ignored me, but I remember that the summer of 1974. That is, I have to refresh my memory on that. Uh, yeah, that's what that is. That's the Bruce Corner in Michigan, Upper Michigan, that belongs to a Finnish family. It's a well-known stop in the Upper Michigan Peninsula, just across from Wisconsin. And that's Houghton, Michigan, again in the Upper Peninsula. It's kind of very interesting. And that's Detroit. And this is the tunnel to Ontario, which would be in Canada. And the interesting thing about that is you're actually going south from the United States into Canada. You're actually geographically going south if you cross the border from the United States into Canada at this particular point. That's kind of interesting. A little geography lesson. That's a 2012 picture. That's Tiger Stadium. Wanted to have a baseball stadium here. And that's, again, a sign in Upper Michigan. Notice that it's 1,990 miles from Miami. Or that's interesting. This is in Minnesota. This is the Laurentian Divide. This is a place where three different land masses intersect in northeastern Minnesota. The Laurentian Divide. And that's a tunnel along Highway 61 along the cliffs along the shore of Lake Superior in Minnesota. And this is in the northwest angle of Minnesota. This is a public domain picture, and oh, it's kind of interesting. That's the farthest I've been there once in 2000. In 2001, in the summer of 2001. You have to drive through a little bit of Manitoba to get to it, actually, on a dirt road through Manitoba. That's some destruction from Hurricane Katrina. That's in Mississippi, however, along the Mississippi coast, 2006. That's some destruction in Tupelo, Mississippi. 2014 visit in the state of Mississippi. That is in North Carolina. I think that's going up Mount Mitchell, I think. That's a tunnel. I think that's the Road to Nowhere attraction in the Smokies. That's another tunnel in North Carolina, but I'm not sure I remember what that is. And that's, I think, in the Smokies. I think that's from Mount Mitchell. And grandfather, oh, that's in New Hampshire. That's on top of Mount Washington. And this is New Jersey. I think that's the Edison House in Caldwell, New Jersey, near where I lived once. And that's the New Jersey side of the Hudson River seen from the Hudson Yards in New York City and Market, New Jersey. And that's Jersey City, New Jersey, where practically every financial company has a building so their employees can work there and live there, and it's cheaper than living and working in Manhattan. Kind of interesting. That's northern New Jersey. And that's some construction along the meadowlands between Newark and New York City you could see from the railroad when you're going to New York, but that's in New Jersey. And that's in New Mexico. That's actually an extinct volcano in northeastern New Mexico. It's kind of interesting. It's not very well known. And you can get to it from the Oklahoma Panhandle. We'll get to that shortly. That's Nevada. That is an area in Nevada on a trip from 2012. It's in the mountains. And that's the Yucca Mountain sign, and that's also in Nevada. And that's in New York State, near the Adirondacks from 2012. That's actually Buffalo, just south of Niagara Falls. Can widen that out a little bit. Buffalo, New York. And that's the Hudson Yards in New York City that they built over an area that the railroad used to go through at about 30th Street. And this is I can't remember the name of that track you can climb up it. That's from inside a building. And that's Niagara Falls, New York, driving across from Canada. That's in 2019. And that's just a view of New York City from the Freedom Tower, which that's also that's November of 2015, Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn, I think. That's the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, one of the buildings. And that's again the road because these are in order, just how in England, up Whiteface Mountain in the Adirondacks in New York State. That's a farm. That's actually was my uncle's farm near Kipton, Ohio. Kind of some interesting railroad toy displays. We used to play baseball in this yard right here when I was a boy. And that's a street in Kipton, Ohio, 5 miles west of Overland, That's where we stayed in the summers. My grandmother had a house about half a mile from this downtown. And again, it's 5 miles west of Oberlin and about 6 miles, I think, Norwalk, what's west of it. Um, Wakeman, I think, is the next town west, and then south is Wellington. That's in Oklahoma. That the Arbuckle Mountains in Oklahoma. That's kind of an attraction. That's from 2020. Visit 2022 in the middle of central Oklahoma, just a little low mountain range. And that's actually, I believe, in the panhandle of Oklahoma. I actually visited the panhandle. That's in Pennsylvania. That's the town of State College in a valley, in a mountain valley in Pennsylvania, where Penn State is. And then that's the site near Butler, Pennsylvania, where the assassination of Trump was attempted in 2024 in the summer. And you most of it's roped off, so you can't really get too very close to it, but that's fairly close to it. And this is the Flight 93 Memorial area, just west of the Allegheny Mountain Tunnel, in Somerset, Pennsylvania. And this is the Horseshoe Bend Curve, near Altoona, Pennsylvania. Some scenery around that, and see a train up there. And another Pennsylvania mountain scene. I think that's near Sidling Hill. And that's either Sidling Hill Tunnel or Rays Hill Tunnel. I'm not sure. I think it's Sidling Hill. I visited that in 2016, and the part of the 13 miles of the Pennsylvania Turnpike that's abandoned. That's interesting. And that's Newport, Rhode Island, from a trip in 2015. And that's a memorial. There was a nightclub fire in, I think it was West Warwick, Rhode Island, in the Providence area in 2003. A filmmaker named Go Davis had documented some of that I knew, and he's passed away. That was in West Warwick, Rhode Island. That's in South Carolina. That's the church that had an incident at it, an unfortunate incident at it. That's from 2015. And that's the entrance to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in Columbia, where I had my Army basic in 1968, but that picture was taken in 2015. And that's Nashville, the state capital of Nashville. Can't see it very well, Tennessee. And those are the Cumberland Mountains in Tennessee, near Chattanooga, in Cleveland, Tennessee, in the southeastern part. And that's another lake in Tennessee. This is a picture from Big Bend National Park in Texas. I think it's actually looking into Mexico, from a Sierra Club trip in 1979 over Thanksgiving weekend. And that's the Red River. I think that's looking into Oklahoma from Texas. And that's the national park. What's the big national park? And the highest point in Texas, I think it's McKinley State Park. Forgetting the name of the park right now. But it's in the Texas Panhandle. And that's a picture near Uvalde, Texas, in southern Texas, about 80 miles or so north of the border, but south of San Antonio. That's Richmond, Virginia, the state capital. That's a Skyline Drive scene in Virginia. That's the old Capitol in Williamsburg. At one time, Virginia's capital was going to be located in Williamsburg until they changed it to Richmond. And this old Capitol has a different architecture than the state capitol in Richmond has a sort of a Greek architecture. That's interesting. That's the Wren Building at the College of William and Mary, where I started my college career at. That's a long story. That's Mount St. Helens. That's a public domain picture from in Washington State, which erupted in 1980. And I flew over it on a trip back from Seattle to San Francisco when I had flown to Hawaii and Alaska. I was returning home to Texas back in 1980. That's in Wisconsin, some scenery near northwest of Madison. There's some hill country there. That's the Dolly Sods area in West Virginia. And I think this is the last picture. That's Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. That was on the day that I went there when there had been a train derailment in December of 2019. And I can also just go to a map here and point out that that's where the northwest angle is, that I talked about. And then Mount St. Helens was over here, and you can see a map of the United States and see where a lot of things are. But that's what I have for you today. I just wanted to do my tour of the Great American State Fair, my version of what I would have done with mostly my material and some public domain material. And I do thank you for watching.